Well, state police have launched a sexual assault kit program. A new law requires them to keep track of those kits for 20 years. Jasmine Bingham has the story.
Now that Louisiana State Police have launched the sexual assault tracking kit program, survivors may gain some reassurance about their cases. Previously, both pediatric and adult kits were available. However, this one is standardized and only available through Louisiana State Police. State Police Captain Chad Guidry says on average, Louisiana collects around 1,200 to 1,400 kits a year. He says this may help prevent cases from being lost.
Cases where the sexual assault kit was never submitted to a crime lab or may have been lost or whatever it may have been, and there's no really insight onto where that process got lost. This now allows the survivor to see and track the progress, to give them that, if you want to call it comfort, to give them more closure, to give them more insight and transparency on what's happening with their actual case.
Assistant Director at the Wellspring Counseling and Development Center, Melanie Clark, says the program could give survivors a sense of assurance in knowing the offense has not gone unnoticed.
If there's not regular communication with them from an investigator, they may think, oh, well, they've forgotten about me, or they're not doing anything with this investigation, it's not going anywhere. Now with this new tracking system, the survivor can know where in the steps of the criminal justice process that evidence collection kit is.
Medical examiners, law enforcement, and sexual assault survivors are the only ones able to access information from the sexual assault kits. Clark says the Wellspring offers tools for sexual assault survivors, as well as including free counseling and assistance from an advocate in certain cases.
If you do want to have evidence collected, an advocate will be provided to be with you through that process while you're at the hospital, and we can provide accompaniment to survivors through scheduled law enforcement interviews as well.
The tracking kit and survivor portal are available at lsp.org. In Monroe, Jasmine Bingham, KNOE 8 News.
Well, happening now, the Monroe City Council is meeting and expected to talk about changes to the chairman's duties. They're also planning to appoint a new person to the Board of Commissioners for the Southside Economic Development District. We will have an update for you coming up tonight at 10.